Good morning. Well, as you're watching this, it is actually the evening if you're watching it when it's being uploaded, but right now it's Saturday morning. And I haven't filmed a weekly reading vlog this week, so I wanted to do a day reading vlog today. I don't know how much reading is going to get done today, but we're going to be doing lots of discussions around books because I want to talk about comforting books. I feel like it's one of the things I get asked about a lot. What books would I recommend when you need a bit of comfort? And I did do a video, I think around March or April 2020, with some of my recommendations of comforting books. But I think probably what I want to read right now is quite different to what I recommended in that particular video. So I thought we could go over this subject again. And I also have some questions that you've asked me that I thought could be their own video, but upon reflection, I don't think that they need to be their own video. You know, what are my top 10 favorite audiobooks and a few other bookish questions that are substantial, but not enough to be their entire own thing. So we can go through those things in this video as well. Mr. M is out today, so I want to keep myself busy. I am in need of some comforting books, and we can talk about a bit about why later, but not right now, because one, I don't want to start off this video being really depressing, and two, I have to leave the house in 20 minutes, and you may be able to tell I'm still in my pajamas, and I don't wish to have a big cry right now and then need to go and pull myself together and get ready to go. So we'll talk about that later, but quickly, before I leave the house, I thought I would show you what I am planning to start the day with, and I thought I would pick up A Helping Hand by Celia Dale. I've mentioned this one a few times recently because I've just bought it and it was one of my most anticipated releases. Now, comforting books, let me hold up another one which I plan to read today. The Tea Dragon Tapestry. This is a graphic novel. You can tell this is comforting, right? You can tell just by, you know, the coziness of it. Like, this just looks like a warm hug. A Helping Hand, I think, is, I'm not sure if it's crime, it's on the edge of thriller. Maybe not one would think of as comforting, but I really do gravitate towards crime fiction when I want comfort. Nothing truly gory and horrifying, not that I don't sometimes appreciate that too, but I think it's because with crime, there is a certain formula that it follows that in itself can be comforting, and also you know that there's going to be a resolution at the end. You're going to find out who did it. Someone's probably going to get caught. You know, there's something comforting about that. I think it provides answers. There will be an end point. Things will be solved. There will be resolution, and that is comforting. I don't actually know if that applies to this specific book, as I said, but that's the feeling I get from it. It's about two people who run, I think it's like a B&B, and one of their clients, one of their residents dies, and she gives them all her money. She's left them her money in her will, and they decide to go on holiday to celebrate that, where they meet a wealthy widow and her niece, and then they invite them to come and stay with them. I mean, I get the feeling that probably they're killing off wealthy people who are residents in their home and just taking their money. I don't think it's supposed to be this huge, oh my goodness, what's going on? I think that we as a reader are supposed to anticipate what's happening. That's all I've gleaned from reading the blurb, and that is my first impression, which could be very wrong, but I will update you as we go through this video. I won't update you on all the spoilers, obviously, but I will tell you how I'm feeling about this book. So this is the one I'm going to put in my bag today. And I may also listen to an audiobook as I walk to where I'm going. I'm going to meet a friend for a walk. I'm walking to my walk. Is that a weird thing to say? I'm walking to my walk. And I may start a new audiobook today, or I may listen to a bookish podcast. So I have two options. I may listen to Books Unbound, which is Ariel and Raylene's bookish podcast. And it's just a cozy blanket. It's lovely. It's very comforting. They talk about books. They talk about what they've been up to. It's great. But the other option is that I could start listening to Sarah Waters' audiobook. It is my final Sarah Waters book to read, though if the rumours are true, she may have a new book out next year, which is why I'm considering starting this one, because there will be another book soon in the not too distant future, so I don't mind finishing her backlist. The one that I have yet to read is Affinity. I think it's narrated by Juliet McMahon. I think that's right, and if it's not, I will correct myself later when we come back and talk about audiobooks. But I have listened to all of Sarah Waters' books on audio, and I've loved them. She narrates all of them apart from The Little Stranger, which was narrated by Simon Vance, which was also fantastic narration. I just think they're so atmospheric, and storytelling is so at the heart of what those books are about. I know that sounds like quite a vague thing to say about a book, but they have such a Dickensian feel to them without being the annoying things that I feel about Dickens. You know, they're queer Victorian novels for the most part, and I just absolutely love them. The one that I haven't read, as I said, is Affinity, and I think it's set in a prison, but I don't remember much else about it. Again, we can talk about that later if I end up starting it. But those are my options: a lovely Sarah Waters audiobook or a lovely bookish podcast. And then also I will be reading this when I sit down anywhere, and when we get home later, I think I will read the Tea Dragon Tapestry, and then we can also have a chat and talk about comforting books in general. I may go round my shelves and pick up some things that I would like to get to over the coming months that also scream comfort, and I would love to know what books you associate with comfort. Maybe I'll even start a Moomin book today, who knows. That's been on my TBR for a long time, but I also don't want to do that thing where I start a million different books, because that in itself is not comforting. Right, I'm going to put you on pause because I need to get ready to go, but I also need to hang up some washing before I go. I will insert some B-roll footage here of the autumnal walk that I am going on. I hope that it's going to be very beautiful. The woods near us are looking stunning at the moment. Everything is very yellow, and just that warms my heart. So I will insert some B-roll footage here, and then I'll come back and talk to you a bit later on. I was just making myself a cup of tea and spied our neighbour's cat in our garden. She's so lovely and so shy. On the way back, you'll have seen I also ran into a different cat who we call Ghost. Someone asked on Instagram if I know the names of all of our neighbourhood cats. And no, I know a couple of their actual names because they live on our street, but for the most part, these are just names that we have made up and give them and say a hi to them using when we're out for a walk. And yeah, I think lots of people do that. I thought it was a weird thing, and then I've spoken to people and I realised that lots of people do this, and that pleases me. It pleases me a lot. I've just realised in the viewfinder I've still got mask in my pocket. Dungarees pockets are super handy for keeping things in. So I am back from my walk. On the way back, bag here, I did a Mrs. Dalloway and I bought myself some flowers, and I walked past Whole Foods because I went into town for the walk that I just went on, and I have never made a pumpkin pie before. I've never made one, and Sana made one. I think it was last winter. I think so, or the winter before, and she gave a slice to me and I really enjoyed it. And when I was walking past Whole Foods, they had this whole display in the window of pumpkin, like tinned pumpkin. Why can't I think of words? Tinned pumpkin. And I don't know if it's hard to find here. I've never really looked that hard for it because Whole Foods is an American store. They had it in the window. So I put my mask on and I went in, and I have bought some tinned pumpkin and also some condensed milk. And I think I'm going to make a pumpkin pie in this video because it's autumn and that sounds like a fun thing to do, and it's super easy because I know how to do short crust pastry, and then I just need to, I think, throw a few ingredients and spices together to make the pumpkin mixture to go inside. So we can do that in this video too. I didn't end up reading any of the Celia Dale. I will still in this video, but I haven't picked it up yet. But I did listen to an hour and a half of Affinity by Sarah Waters. I was incorrect before. It is not Julia McMahon who narrates it. It is Juanita McMahon. Apologies, Juanita. And her narration is just so great. And I think that she is a huge reason as to why I find these books comforting, because it's the uniformity of the books. Sarah Waters' books are quite predictable, not in the entirety of their plot, but you know that the main character, a woman, is going to fall in love with another woman, and it's probably going to be someone who they don't expect to fall in love with. Maybe it's the first time they've been in a relationship with a woman. Probably they're going to be of a different class to them. There's going to be lots of barriers in their way. So that's normally the setup. So it's comforting to know that that's what you're getting yourself into. And because the narrator is the same across all books, you feel like you're slipping back into the same story with different characters as well, which is not to downplay the intricacies of the plot and how different each book is. I just mean they have the same warm atmosphere, and I love it. I don't have much to report because these books are really languid. They take their time and they set the scene, so not a whole lot of plot has happened, even though I've listened to an hour and a half of it. It's about a woman called Margaret who has been ill for quite a period of time. I'm not sure if that's physically or mentally yet. It's quite vague, but she's decided that she wants to go into Millbank and go into the women's prison and talk to female prisoners and help them, maybe educate them, be there for them, help them in their rehabilitation. And I'm sure she's going to fall in love with one of the female prisoners. But that's all I've got so far, and I am, yeah, as I said, really enjoying it. So that is where we're at reading wise. I said at the beginning of this video that I was in need of some comforting books right now, and that I would talk a little bit about that. It's very difficult sometimes to work out what to share online, and I thought that I would be really open about this part of my life. I had definitely planned to be, because I found it really helpful when other people have been. So 6 years ago, I went for my first IVF appointment, and I have mentioned that on here very briefly in passing, just saying, I think quite literally, that Miss M and I were going to be doing IVF, and then also that it got put on pause, which was really emotionally difficult because of the pandemic. It had to happen, but clinics closed, and it added a big chunk of waiting time to everything when we'd already been waiting a really long time. As I said, my first appointment was 6 years ago, and over the past 6 years there's been a process for me of lots of tests and funding applications, because we're doing it through the NHS, disability hoop jumping, so many different meetings, working out if my body, like what it can handle and all of this stuff. And I really thought that I was going to be very, as I said, open about this process, not while I was doing it, but I thought what I would like to do is to, and it's hilarious to me now thinking that this was what I was planning to do, but I had thought maybe I could vlog the process, not appointments or anything like that, but basically clips of how I was feeling at individual stages, because I found it really helpful to watch other people's IVF vlogs, because it is such an overwhelming experience. And the more I got into it, the more I just thought, I can't vlog this process, I can't talk about it while I'm in it. And then I thought, well, maybe once it's over or I reach a certain point, I'll feel able to sit down and talk about it in a lot of detail. And I've realized I don't think that I'm probably ever going to make that video, and that's absolutely fine. I know that, but it's just a bit weird to me to think that that was what I was planning to do, and the realization of I just absolutely can't do that. All of this has been going on in the background for a really long time. It was put on pause during the beginning of COVID, because even when clinics reopened, disabled people and not chronically ill people, what do I mean? What am I? CEV, clinically extremely vulnerable people couldn't go back into the clinic straight away once they had reopened. So I think it was nearly 2-year delay for us again. And then we were able to start properly again in November of last year. So this year, 2022, has been a very intense time. I've spent the majority of this year on so many different drugs, and I was really dangerously ill after an egg collection operation in May. You may remember that I was away for all of May, and I said I'd had complications after an operation. I had bad ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. I won't go into details of what that is, but essentially I had internal bleeding, and it was a really miserable time. And everyone's experience of doing IVF is different. We're also doing PGD IVF, which is only, I think, 4% of all IVF, so it's different again. So I feel the need to say this with love. Please don't leave any medical advice in the comment section down below, just because everyone's situation is incredibly different, and I'm not going to provide the details of our particular situation, but I have put my body through so much this year, and I've pushed it really, really far, and it has been overwhelming. And I honestly just don't have the words to talk about it. It has been a lot. And at the end of everything, we had one embryo, one little embryo. And I went back on drugs. Sounds like a weird thing to say. I went back on drugs in September so that we could do the transfer. And it didn't work. Honestly, to have that embryo transfer and to have an ultrasound picture of that embryo inside my womb, and then just to wait those 2 weeks taking pregnancy test after pregnancy test and just negative. If anyone wants to take out shares in Clear Blue and First Response, I swear I think I have bolstered the position of those companies. My desk is just littered with negative pregnancy tests. It is just, oh guys, my body tried so hard, and I'm just so sad. I am so sad. Sorry, I had to take a break, and now the sun has set and we have terrible lighting, which I will fix in a bit. The whole situation sucks. To have a whole 6-year process, and at various points it looked like it was going so well, and then it wouldn't be, or there would be a glitch, and it's inevitable when you're doing something like this. But to get to the end and all that pressure for that one embryo, I know it's fine to cry, but I also just want to talk, and if I cry then I can't talk, and I've just done so much crying these past few weeks. It is wild to me sometimes to think about what's going on in people's lives. Obviously, we all have lots of stuff going on. We're all complex human beings. But I know that I am guilty sometimes of watching people's channels and forgetting that there's probably loads of stuff going on that they're not talking about. And as I said, I'm a very open person on here. I talk about anything that I feel I can share that is relevant to me, my own personal circumstances. But this has just been a massive thing that has taken over my entire existence, and I haven't been able to talk about it because, well, for one reason or another, I just haven't had the tools to talk about, and I still don't have the tools to talk about it. But I had to mention it because it feels like a betrayal of everything that I've been doing. And this, I'm going to use the word valiant, this valiant embryo, like it's such, It's such a grieving process. Every stage of IVF is a grieving process. And I had to acknowledge that in this video because it's just, oh, it's just been rubbish. It's been so rubbish. It's not the end. I need to get physically better, and I need to give my brain time, because honestly, my poor brain, I don't know where it's at right now. It does not know where it's at right now. I need to give myself time and then regroup, and then we can start from scratch again next year. The thought of doing it all again when I have been so ill is quite frankly scary. Once you've had ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, as soon as you start taking drugs again, your body kicks into gear and goes to that dangerous place again. So we have to change what we're doing so that I don't get dangerously ill, because you can die from ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. I don't know why I'm laughing when I say that. You can die. So they need to change the drugs you're on to stop that happening, but that also means that you're on less stim, which means that it's less likely to be successful because you're on fewer drugs. It's all, you know, a balancing act. And obviously in this video I'm using the word I a lot. It's not just me, but my partner is not online, so I can only speak for myself here. That's the only fair thing to do. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I put the really depressing spin on this video, but that is where I am. That's why I'm in need of comforting books, and that's why we're talking about that today. I need to go and, you know, what do I need to do? I was going to say scream into a void. I'm not going to go scream into a void. I'm going to bake a pumpkin pie. That's what we're going to do. And then we're going to read some more and we're going to talk about that. Yes, that's it. Okay, let's bake a pie. Hi, it is the next day. Mr. M and I just got back from a walk on the heath, which was nice. I will insert a little clip of that here. The pumpkin pie worked out really well. I kind of made up the recipe having looked at other ones, so I will list what I did in the description box down below. And what I decided to do today when I went back to have more was to put chopped roasted hazelnuts on the top, which I think really worked, which I'm sure is not a new thing that no one has ever done before. But the one thing that I don't love about pumpkin pie is it has a bit of a lack of texture, because, well, it just does. So having those chopped roasted hazelnuts on top was really, really nice, and I would recommend that too. So let's do a reading update. I have read the first 40 pages of A Helping Hand by Celia Dale. As I mentioned before, we followed this middle-aged couple, and they're in Italy on holiday, I think in the 60s, which is when this was published, or maybe the 50s, and they meet a wealthy widow and her niece. And this couple don't really communicate with each other much when they're alone, but then when they spot, I guess, who are going to be their targets because they want to take their money, they go into this automatic mode. It's this stealth mode where they clearly really like following a certain pattern to exploit people. So that has been interesting to read. It seems to be the one thing that connects them. They don't seem to connect, generally speaking. They're both in their own little world. So it's quite slow. I'm getting Highsmith vibes from it, and I am liking it. I haven't listened to any more of the audiobook, but I have started the Tea Dragon Tapestry. I'm trying to savour it because it is the last one in the trilogy, and I think it is easy to race through graphic novels, but the art in here is just so beautiful. I want to pay it, you know, the most attention, give it lots of respect. So I will insert a cutaway here so you can see what the art style is like. The colours are just so stunning, and it is the most autumnal thing. So if you haven't read or heard about the Tea Dragon Society, which is the first book in the trilogy, it's about a group of people who look after and nurture tea dragons, who are dragons that grow specific tea out of their heads. So one will grow jasmine tea, one will grow chamomile, and at the beginning of this one we're following a tea dragon who's very sad because their previous owner had passed away, and they now have a new owner, but they are still grieving, and so they're not growing tea leaves from their head. It's wholesome, it's lovely, it's very inclusive, and it just makes me happy. I said that I would talk about my favourite audiobooks in this video, because it's a question that I get asked a lot, and I have done a video before about audiobooks that I like, but I decided that I would sit down and make a list, if I can find it somewhere in here, of my top 10 favourite audiobooks. As with any list, if you ask me on a different day, it could possibly change. But on the day that I sat down to write this list, these were my top 10. Okay, I think I kind of attempted to put them in some kind of order, but this is a very loose order. So number 10, we have The Red Room by Nikki French, which is narrated by Kate Rawson. I know that I bang on about a different series by Nikki French, which may or may not be in this list somewhere, but as a standalone, The Red Room is my favourite that they have written, and it is very similar to the Frida Klein series. It has a protagonist called Kit Quinn, who is a psychoanalyst instead of a psychotherapist, and she sustains an injury when she is with a client, and she ends up having a facial disfigurement, and she takes some time off from work and then comes back into it. And I really like the subtle social commentary on the disfigurement that she now has and how people interact with her and how she feels about her job. But the mystery in it is just really, really satisfying, and I loved it. It's my favourite standalone of theirs, so that will be number 10. Number 9 is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and this one is narrated by Kerry Fox. Never Let Me Go is one of those books that is one of my favourite books of all time, and I was slightly nervous to revisit it after maybe 10 years, but I needn't have worried because the reread was just as good, if not even more painful, because I knew what was coming. Never Let Me Go is one of those books that you can't really describe, and I would recommend going into it knowing nothing. If you have read it before, I very much recommend revisiting it on audiobook, and the same goes for the next one, which is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and this particular audiobook is narrated by Elizabeth Moss, who is the person who plays Offred in The Handmaid's Tale, and she does a brilliant rendition in the audiobook. I loved it. I re-listened to it before reading the Testaments for the first time, and it was a great way in. The pacing I think really works on audiobook as well, and because it's such a private, personal narrative, feels very secretive, I think it works particularly well in audiobook form. Number 7, we have Passing by Nella Larson, and this one is narrated by Tessa Thompson. There are quite a few different versions of Passing because it's a classic. It's from, is it from the 20s? It's certainly set in the 20s. I can't remember when it was first published, but I adore it. And there is a new film, which I still have not watched, with Tessa Thompson in it. So I love that she is the person who narrates the audiobook. It's about race and class and colorism in Harlem in the 1920s, and it is so tense. It's a really short audiobook as well. Number 6 is Lanny by Max Porter. I actually read this one first in physical form and then revisited it in audiobook form. It's a full cast narration, so it is narrated by Annie Aldington, Claire Corbett, David Tinson, and can't read my writing. I think that says Jet Davies, but I am not sure. Anyway, that's what I wrote down. Lanny is inspired by the myth of the Green Man, kinda, and it is folklore set in a small commuter town, and it's about a young boy who goes missing. I adore it. Again, I don't want to say more about it because I think it works well if you don't know that much. You get completely swept up in the narrative. I actually saw Max performing this at the South Bank. Was it the South Bank? Anyway, at a theatre when the book came out, with a band and a couple of other actors actors and they were reading parts, and it's just so atmospheric. It definitely works as a play and therefore also as an audiobook. Number 5 on my list is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This is not for the faint-hearted. It is narrated by the author, and it's brilliantly narrated by her. It's set in the northeast in Newcastle because that's where the author is from. It's where the characters are also from in this novel. And I loved listening to it because of the Geordie accent. Made me feel like I was at home because I'm also from the northeast, though I'm from Sunderland, not Newcastle, which is a very big difference. If you're from the north, you will know there is big rivalry. And it's about a young woman who wants to be a photographer, but she has a very specific style when it comes to photography. She likes to pull men off the streets and put them in compromising positions and take photographs of them. I would say if you like not Pretty Little Woman, if you like Promising Young Woman, I was mixing up so many different film titles there, Promising Young Woman, then you will like it. Number 4 is My Name is Leon by Kit Duvall, which is narrated by Lenny Henry. It is an amazing book, and Lenny Henry does the most fantastic narration. It's also recently been made into a film, which you can watch on BBC iPlayer, which also has Lenny Henry in it. Number 3 is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, and this is narrated by Anna Maria Nabiri. Girl, Woman, Other is a masterpiece, and I have listened to the audiobook I think about 3 times. I read it first in physical form, revisited it in audio form. Girl, Woman, Other is about 11 women and 1 non-binary person. It's about race in Britain, and it's about family relations. In each section there are 5 sections, so it's like a play, 5 acts, and in each of the first 4 sections there are 3 women, 1 girl, 1 woman, and then 1 other person who is related to the other 2 in that section in some way. I just adore it with all of my heart. Number 2 is The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow, and it's narrated by Kristen Atherton. Kristen Atherton is such a brilliant audiobook narrator that she's someone I have then gone on to search for to see what other audiobooks she has narrated, and I actually listened to one of her audiobooks last month, which I will speak about in my next video, which will be a wrap up. But I think that's high praise for an audiobook narrator. This is a book that's about Mary, the middle sibling in Pride and Prejudice, and I listened to it when I decorated our flat, the last place that we lived in. And it's funny how you can remember, well, you can do that with any book. If you take it somewhere with you, you often associate a time and place with the book that you happen to be reading. But I think with audiobooks, because you can do other things at the same time, there's a greater association with that. So I'll always associate that with decorating our flat. And then finally, no surprise to anyone, number 1 for me is the Frida Klein series by Nikki French, narrated by Beth Chalmers, my favourite ever crime series. The first one is called Blue Monday, and I think that's all I need to say about it because I've talked about it enough for us all. So those are my top 10 audiobooks of the moment, and revisiting those brings me great comfort. Rereading books in general can be very comforting. I was thinking what other books I gravitate towards when I am in need of comfort, and often I will go to middle grade books. Julia and the Shark is a book that I found really comforting last year, and I'm really looking forward to reading Layla and the Blue Fox, which is their latest. I plan to pick that up this month. I also gravitate towards Persephone Books, who are a publisher who reissue classics mainly written by women, and I'm often asked where to start with their books, and I would say the most comforting book that I have read that they publish is called Doreen by Barbara Noble, and it's about a young girl who was evacuated during World War II, and it's about how she copes with leaving her mum behind in London and then being with this new family in this small village. And it's just a wonderful narrative, and I've gone on to read more books by Barbara Noble and have thoroughly enjoyed those as well. So I think I'm going to leave this video here. Thank you for being here and for listening to me chat in this video. I would love to know what books you find particularly comforting in a comment down below. That would be nice. If you're new to my channel and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. I forgot to say at the beginning, my name is Jen, but you've probably realised that by now. I am an author and a book reviewer. And if you like my channel and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that's very kind. Link to that will be in the description box down below as well. I think that I'm going to go And yeah, I'm gonna go and have dinner and upload this and have dinner. And I hope that you're all doing all right. And I will see you for another video soon. Lots of love.